welcome to the Beach House 34 podcast. I'm your host, Christine Worth. Welcome, new subscribers, and welcome back to our devoted listeners. If you're here, you know that I've covered the Darlie Routier Trial transcripts from the very beginning. The mother, who in 1997 was accused and convicted of murdering her two children in Rowlett, Texas. If you're brand new here and want to start from the very beginning, you'll find all of the trial transcripts in their very own playlist on YouTube. The actual trial testimony at this point for this episode is over, and we're now in the punishment phase of the trial. Witnesses are testifying about Darlie, and in today's episode, we hear from quite a few of them for the defense, including friends of Darlie's. We hear from Darin, and we even hear from a 12-year-old girl who lived across the street and spent much of her time at the Routier home. So let's get started with the defense testimonies in this punishment phase of the trial. And we start off with Dana Routier, Darlie's sister-in-law. And we begin with the testimony of Dana Routier, who is Darin's sister-in-law and wife of Deon. And the direct examination is being done by Mr. Douglas Mulder. Dana, will you tell the jury where you were born and raised? I was born in Nashville, Tennessee, and I was raised in Denver, Colorado until I was 15, and then I moved to Lubbock, Texas when I was 15. Okay. And you have been called here to testify, Dana, in regards to Darlie Routier. Do you know her? Yes, I do. Do you see her here on my immediate left? Yes, I do. Okay. How did you first meet her? We met in high school. When my sister and I first moved to Lubbock, we went to school at Monterey High School in Lubbock, Texas. And Darlie, I believe she had already been attending Monterey at that time, and her and I just got to be friends. Okay. And you had moved from out of state, and so had she? Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Okay. And had a close relationship, got to know her well. Did you? Mm-hmm. And then subsequently, y'all married brothers. Did you not? Right. Well, we had kind of lost track of each other because she had graduated from a different high school. But when I started dating Deon, my husband, it was kind of a joke, or not a joke, but it was funny because he had told me, well, guess who my brother married? And I came over to the house and they wouldn't tell me who she was. And then they said, Darlie. And it seemed like we picked up right where we left off, just immediately. It was good to be back in touch with her. I don't know. Okay. When did you and Deon marry? October 9th of 1993. Okay. And did you live there in Lubbock? Yes. Would you see Darlie and Darin frequently? Mm-hmm. How often would you see them? Well, about every third week of the month, we would go at least once a month to Dallas from Lubbock. When you did, would you stay with them? Mm-hmm. In Rowlett? Mm-hmm. Be there for several days? Well, we usually could just stay the weekend because we were both in school and working. You were both attending Texas Tech? Yes. I guess you got to know their children well. Yes. Would you say that you were close to Darlie and Darin and their three boys? Yes. Did you have occasion to see Darlie in the company of her boys? Yes. And how she treated her boys? Yes, I did. On many occasions? Mm-hmm. And then the court says, ma'am, could you say yes or no? And the witness says, okay. And Mr. Mulder says, can you tell the jury how she treated those youngsters? When Deon and I were first married, I didn't have any children. But Darlie had her two boys, and she was just such an example for me. I mean, it's the kind of mother that how I wanted to raise my children. She was very giving and very loving and very kind with her time and herself. And the things that she wanted to instill in those children were very important to me. Did you ever see her have a violent moment toward them? Never. Did you ever see her do anything that you thought was strange or unusual? No. Would you talk with her frequently by telephone? Yes. And when was your child born? April 8th, 1994. A little boy or a little girl? A little boy. Okay. Did you call on Darlie from time to time as your first child was growing? Yes, I did. And why would you do that? Well, because I was a first time mother and Darlie had been, had gone through this twice with Devin and Damon. And because I felt so comfortable talking with Darlie and she was so supportive with everything else. And I knew, I could go to her about the things that I was panicked about as far as being a first time mother, like teething and bottles. And, I panicked about everything being a first time mom. And Darlie was always real supportive. And, I admired her advice on how she, the example. She was a very good example for me and how what I wanted to instill with my children. Did the boys ever visit you and Deon in Lubbock? They did. How long would they visit? Well, they would go and stay with grandmother and granddaddy, which is Lenny and Cyrilda Routier. And they would come and stay with us, me and Uncle Deon, for a night, maybe a night at a time. Dana, did you ever see her strike her children? I did not, no. Or punish them in anger or anything like that? No. When the children would visit you, would she call and check on the children? Yes. Did she supervise the children when they played out of the home in your presence? Yes, yes. Was there anything that went on that you thought was improper or inappropriate? Never. No. Did she and Darin seem to be getting along as husband and wife? Well, sure. Yes. Did you feel her relationship with her children was in all ways normal as far as you could see? Yes, it was very normal. You felt like she loved her three sons? Absolutely. Mr. Mulder then says, we will pass the witness. And the cross examination is done by Mr. Greg Davis. Mrs. Routier, do you know why the defendant went to another school in Lubbock? I believe it was a half a day work program where it was work and school, but no, I'm not sure. Okay. Were you still talking with the defendant in April and May of 1996? Mm-hmm. Okay. In your discussions with her, did you ever become aware that she was having problems there in her home? No. Mr. Davis says no further questions. And the court says, you may step. And Mr. Mulder says, wait just a moment, if I might. And the court says, sure. And so the redirect is done by Mr. Mulder. When is the last time you had seen Darlie before June the 6th, before this tragedy? It was about a week and a half before. Tell the jury what happened. We had gone, Deon and I brought Dylan to Dallas and we stayed with them, which was regular. I mean, we would do that quite often. We'd come up and stay for the weekend, but that weekend we had made plans to go to the Scarborough Fair because I had never been. And Deon and Darlie and Darin wanted to take me because I had never been. And they took me to the state fair for my first time. So they wanted to take me to the Scarborough Fair for my first time. I mean, we just had the best time. We had taken Dylan for that time that we had gone, and we were there for about half a day. And we were just, it was the best weekend. And it was one of the best weekends we got to spend with them. And, we had a terrific time and we really enjoyed ourselves. And it was the last weekend that we were there before this happened. Did they all appear to be getting along normally? Yes, yes. Mr. Mulder says, we will pass the witness. And Mr. Davis says, no questions. The court says, thank you, ma'am. And the next witness up to testify in this punishment phase, and the witnesses for the defense, is Amanda Gray, who is a school teacher and cousin of Darin. And the direct examination is being done by Mr. Douglas Mulder. Would you tell the jury your name, please? Amanda Gray. The court says, how do you spell your last name? And the witness says, Gray. And the court says, thank you. Mr. Mulder then continues. Where do you live, Miss Gray? McKinney, Texas. And how are you employed? I'm a teacher. Where do you teach? Anna, Texas. All right. And so the jury will have some idea where that is. Can you tell them where that is in proximity to Dallas and McKinney? It's north of Dallas and north of McKinney. It's between McKinney and Sherman. Okay. And for how many years have you taught school? 11. What grade do you teach? Sixth. Those children in the sixth grade are what? 11 or 12 years old, something like that? Between 11 and 12. Okay. I guess you, in your 11 years as a teacher, have seen many, many children and many, many parents with their children, I suspect. Yes, I have. Okay. What is your relationship to Darlie Routier? I am her husband's cousin. How old were you when, do you remember back when Darin was born? Yes. The court says, you have to speak a little louder, ma'am, so this lady over here can hear you. Okay. And the witness says, okay, is this okay? And the court says, very good. Thank you. Mr. Mulder then continues. Would you say that you have had a close relationship with Darin? Yes, I do. Kind of. How did you look upon Darin? Well, when he was born, I was 12. And it was like somebody had given me my own little living baby to carry around and take care of. And I have always had that kind of relationship with him. Have you maintained that relationship with him throughout the years? Yes, I have. Okay. And you have known Darlie, I guess, since she and Darin started dating? Yes. She has become a member of y'all's family, has she? Yes, she has. And you love her in that way? Yes, I do. Okay. Do your parents still live in Lubbock? Yes, sir. Do they have occasion to visit you? Yes, sir. And when they do y'all always visit the Darin and Darlie and the boys? Yes, we do. Have you had many occasions, Miss Gray, to observe Darlie in the company of her children? Yes, our family was the kind of family that spends Christmas, Thanksgiving, we spend lots of holidays together. What type of mother was Darlie? A very devoted, kind, concerned, patient, a lot of patience with the boys. Can you picture in your mind her not being a caring, devoted, very loving mother? No, when I think of her, all of the memories that come to me of her with the boys are of loving, kind, caring, taking care of them, great concern for them. Did you ever have occasion to ride with the boys out to Lubbock? Yes, Sorilda and I took them to Lubbock one time. Can you tell us, did Darlie pack their things? Well, I was impressed by the fact that she made each one of them a little lunch kit with each one of them had his own little special snacks in the kit and little toys. And she took a lot of care with each one of them so they would be comfortable on the trip to Lubbock. You thought she was a very caring parent? Yes, I did. You have seen situations, no doubt, where the parents have acted like they didn't want the children. Yes, and you can usually tell by the way the children act, too, if they don't have a caring parent. You can tell that as a school teacher? Yes, sir. I feel like I can. And you counsel with parents and children alike in the school situation, do you not? Yes, sir. Okay. What was Darlie's relationship with her children? Very, very caring with them. Was almost every time we got together, she would ask me things as a teacher that I felt that she could do to when they started school to help them. I told her she needed to read to them as much as she could. Damon had difficulty with his speech, and she asked me my opinion about what I thought she should do with that. And I said he needed to have his hearing tested and be tested for allergies. And what kind of toys did I think would be good for them to have to give them a head start before they went to school? Always a lot of concern for them. Always a very devoted and loving mother. I never saw anything but a loving and devoted mother. Mr. Mulder says, we'll pass the witness. Mr. Davis says, no questions. And the court says, thank you, ma'am. And the next person to testify is Melanie Lynn Waits. She had met Darlie through mutual friends in 1991. And the direct examination is begun by Mr. Curtis Glover. Melanie, if you would tell the jury where you live, in Mesquite, Texas. And the court says, ma'am, speak into the microphone loudly enough so those two people can hear you. Okay? Let's try it again. And the witness says, in Mesquite, Texas. The court says, all right, that's good. And Mr. Curtis Glover continues, all right, Mesquite is a suburb of Dallas, isn't it? Yes. And are you married? Yes. Do you have children? Yes. What kind of work do you do? Sign. I work for a sign company. Work for a sign company. Is that in Dallas or in Mesquite? Dallas. Okay. And how many kiddos do you have? Two. What are they, boys or girls? I have a boy and a girl. Their ages? 6 and 3. Okay. And what does your husband do? He also works with the sign company. It's a family owned business. Okay. What do you do there at that business? I help dispatch cranes and also invoice, that kind of thing. Okay. You create signs for businesses there in Dallas. Is that right? That's correct. Okay. And you say it's family owned? Yes, sir. I'll ask you, Melanie, if you know Darlie Routier. Yes, I do. How did you meet Darlie? Through mutual friends. Okay. How long ago would that have been? About 5 years. Do you recall what occasioned y'all meeting? When we met? Yes. What was the circumstance of your meeting, if you remember? Yes, our mutual friend, were moving away to Arizona, and we had a going away party with all of their friends there, and that is where we met. Were your husbands with you? Yes. Okay. I guess you met Darin at that time? Yes. You all struck up a friendship? Yes. And what kind of interest did you have together during the course of that friendship? Our children, we would call and get together for birthday parties and send invitations. That is kind of how we started our friendship, going to each other's children's birthday parties. Okay. Then you have had occasion, I guess, to see her around her kiddos. Is that right? That's correct. Okay. Tell the jury in your own words what kind of mother you think Darlie has been in the past. To me, she has been a very good mother. Just being around her, she has acted the same as I have, with my children. We would go to these parties, and everything we do is for the children. The parties that you're speaking of, were these parties that always included the children? Yes. They weren't just adult parties, they were adult as well as for the children. Mostly the parties that we went to were for the children. They weren't adult parties? No, Chuck E. Cheese, that kind of thing. A Chuck E. Cheese is kind of a little place where children can go and have their birthday parties? Yes. And you, as parents, both took your kids to those places. Is that right? Yes. Okay. Did Darlie delight in her children? Yes. How about Darin? Oh, yes, both of them. Were they a good team with their children? Yes, they were. Okay. It has been indicated that Darlie uses or has used on occasion bad language, profanity, or curse words in a public place. What do you know about Darlie and any proclivity for doing that sort of thing? I have never heard Darlie use a cuss word. Not once have I ever in her company. Okay. Describe her personality, if you will. What kind of person is she? Rude or no, she is very sweet. Have you had occasion to shop with Darlie over the years? Yes, I have. Okay. What would y'all do together? We went Christmas shopping. We have gone shopping for the children before. Most of the time, when I was out with her, we bought clothes for the kids, things like that. Anything about her that was uppity or no? Or thought she was better than other people? No, she is an easygoing, easy to like person. Okay. Mr. Glover then says, we will pass the witness. And the cross examination is done by Mr. Greg Davis. Miss Waits, you mentioned these parties that you attended with the defendant. Were children always there at these parties? At the children's parties, yes. Were there other parties that you attended with the defendant where no children were present? At New Year's parties? Did you have occasion to be with her during the weekend of Mother's Day in 94 or 95? Mother's Day? Mother's Day weekend. Yes. Okay. Which of those 2 years? Both. Now, specifically, I'm talking about the Saturday night before Mother's Day. Were you with her on those occasions? I believe so. I'm trying to remember what day that was. Well, in 1994, there was a party over there at 5801 Eagle Drive. Was there not? Yes. And certainly no children were invited to that party, were they? No. Either of the defendant's two sisters present at that house? I don't recall either of them being there. And in 1994, did someone come over there to the house to provide entertainment? Yes. Who was that? It was a male stripper. Do you remember what his name was? No, sir. Master Blaster? It could have been. I honestly don't remember. And that evening, did y'all rent a limousine also? Yes, we did. All of the girls then get in the limousine and start riding around town after the party had finished up there at the residence? Yes. In 1995, during that weekend, again, going back to that Saturday night, did you well, going back to 1994, was Darlie Key, the defendant's mother, present at that party in 1994? Yes, she was. In 95, again, you, the defendant, her mother, also present. Did y'all rent a room there at the Anatole Hotel in Dallas? Yes. Who else was present at that party? Who else was present with you in the room there? I can't name everyone, but I can just as many as you can recall. Michelle, Baja, I don't know her last name, Baja's last name, Darlie Key, several of the women I had not met previously, so I really can't name them. How about Dana or Danielle Stahl? Yes. And let's see, Dana would have been what, about 15? I believe so. Okay. I don't recall. Danielle, how old would she have been? I don't know how old Danielle is now. Okay. And that evening, y'all didn't stay in the hotel room the whole night, did you? No. Where did y'all go to celebrate that night? Le Bears. Okay. And Le Bears is what? A gentleman's or a ladies, where ladies go, where gentlemen strip. A strip club for women? Yeah, it's the only one in Dallas. And after you finished there, did you stay the night there at the Anatole? Yes. And I guess then y'all wouldn't have gotten back home until what, about noon on Mother's Day? Yes. And again, no children were invited to that party, were they? No. Mr. Davis says, "That's all the questions I have, Judge." The court says, "You may step down," but then the redirect begins by Mr. Curtis Glover. Melanie, that was just a bunch of girls that got together and celebrated Mother's Day. Is that right? Well, it was more or less a Mother's Day out where once a year the women can get together and get away from everything once a year. Your husbands all knew where you were, didn't they? That's correct. Okay. You told your husband and it was like a slumber party. Is that right? Yeah. But y'all went back to the hotel, didn't you? Yes. Okay. Everybody spent the night there? Yes, we took a taxi back and forth. Okay. Did you find anything wrong with that? No. We all had a good time and made sure that no one was driving. We always made sure that we had transportation there and from. Darlie took care of that. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Glover says, "We have no more questions." And Mr. Davis says, "No further questions, Your Honor." And the court says, "Ma'am, you may step down." The next person up to testify is Darin Routier, who is Darin's brother. And the direct examination is being done by Mr. Douglas Mulder. Deon, tell the jury how old you are, please. I'm 26. Where were you born and raised? Lubbock, Texas. Okay. You graduated from high school there? Yes, sir. You went on to Texas Tech, didn't you? Yes, sir. Did you graduate from Texas Tech? Yes, sir. What is your degree in? I'm political science, pre-law, and telecommunications minor. Okay. How are you employed at this time? I'm an RF engineer, which is radio frequency for PageMart nationwide. Where do you and your wife live? In Plano, Texas. And that is just north of Dallas, isn't it? Yes, sir. Okay. How long have you lived in the Plano area? Ever since this happened, we moved to Dallas. Shortly thereafter? Yes, sir. Okay. Are you and Darin close as brothers? Yes, sir. And are you and Darlie close as family members? Yes, sir. How often would you see, before you moved to the Dallas area from Lubbock, how often would you see your brother and Darlie? Probably on the average of once every 3 weeks. And before you, I guess after you married, you and your wife would make that trip to Dallas? Yes, sir. And before that, how often have you made that trip? Even before I was married, it would probably be about every 3 to 4 weeks. Ever since Darin moved to Dallas, I have gone to see him. He has been there like 8 or 9 years. Okay. So, ever since he moved to Dallas some 8 or 9 years ago, you have visited him on the average of once a month? Yes, sir. Okay. You got to know your nephews well, I guess? Yes, sir. Did you have what you consider a rather special relationship with Devon and Damon? Yes, sir. Okay. And tell the jury about that relationship that you had with those two youngsters. And then the court says, "Do you need some time? Do you want to step down for a minute, sir?" And the witness says, I'm okay." And Mr. Mulder continues, "Did you love those children like they were your own?" Yes, sir. "Do you think Darlie is capable of hurting them?" No, sir. "Any question in your mind?" No, sir. "And you love those children like you love your own son?" Yes, sir. "They were very close to you too, weren't they?" Yes, they were. "What type of mother was she, Deon?" She was a very devoted mother. She did everything for those kids. "You were in their home a weekend once a month from the time they were born, weren't you?" Yes, sir. "So you saw any bad times along with the good, I suspect, did you not?" Yes, sir. "Did you ever see her do anything violent toward the boys?" Never before. "Did you ever do anything? Did you ever see her do anything that you, in retrospect, maybe thought was inappropriate?" No, sir. "How would she correct the boys? I mean, as boys, and I'm sure everything wasn't hunky dory all the time. How would she correct the boys if it was necessary to discipline them?" "She always reasoned with them. And the court says, "You have to raise your voice, sir. They cannot hear it." And the witness says, "She always reasoned with them. She always talked it out and kept asking them over and over again and again. Sometimes I thought, too much because boys need a little more discipline, but she never did. I never saw her spank those kids one time." "Was she very close to them and protective of them?" "Always, always." "You loved those two boys, didn't you?" "Yes, sir, I did." "And you still do?" "I still do." Mr. Mulder says, "We'll pass the witness." Mr. Davis says, "No questions." And the court says, "Thank you, sir." Next up to testify is Rebecca Neal, and she is the daughter of Terry and Karen Neal. So remember, at this point in time, she is 12 years old. And the direct examination is being done by Mr. Richard Mosty. "Rebecca, how old are you?" 12. Okay. "And you and I had an opportunity to meet during lunch, didn't we?" "Yes, sir." "All right. And remember," and the court says, "Mr. Mosty, I hate to interrupt. They still cannot hear you. You are going to have to speak loud. You will hear your voice echo. Don't worry about that." Mr. Mosty says, "Rebecca, can you pull that microphone up?" And the court says, "Right up to you. There you go. All right." And Mr. Mosty then continues, "All right. You remember I told you to just try to relax while you are here?" "Yes." "All right. And you need to try to answer out with a yes or a no or whatever the answer is, rather than saying uh-huh and mm-hmm. Okay? Yes. Okay. And Rebecca, you understand the difference between telling the truth and telling a lie?" "Yes." "And you know that you are sworn under oath to tell the truth here before this jury today?" "Yes." "All right. Now, Rebecca, you're in what grade?" "Sixth." "And where do you go to school?" "Coyle Middle School." "And Rebecca, who are your parents?" "Karen Neal and Terry Neal." "Do you have any brothers and sisters?" "Yes, I have one brother." "All right. And who lives in your house with you?" My mom, my dad, and my brother. Do you need a Kleenex? Yes. And the court says, is there another witness you can put on? Mr. Mosty says, yes. Do you want to call another witness? And the court says, why don't you step down for a minute and then we will have you come back? Okay. All right. Mr. Mosty says, could I step out and maybe visit with her and see if she can get her composure? And the court says, that will be fine. And Mr. Mulder says, Judge, why don't we let her dad come in here and sit in the front row with her or someplace where she can see him? And the court says, that will be fine. If you want him to testify, you can put him on first and then put her on. Okay. Mr. Mulder says, I think it's cumulative. If we can just have him sit in here, that's fine. And the court says, well, that will be fine. Do both sides agree to that? And Mr. Davis says, yes, sir. And the court says, all right, let's bring the father in if that will help. All right. So then the witness comes back into the courtroom and the court says, how are you feeling? And the witness says, okay. And the court says, all right, listen, you just relax. Okay. And she says, okay. The court says, are you ready to go again? And she says, yes, sir. And the court says, okay, go ahead. And Mr. Mosty then continues, Rebecca, this is your dad sitting here on the front row. Is it? Yes, sir. Rebecca, I know this is hard for you. You were friends with Darlie? Yes, sir. And since Darlie has been arrested, have you ever seen her? No, sir. Until just now when you took the witness stand? Yes. And is that what got you upset? Yes. All right. And let me try to move briefly through some of this. You live across the street from the Routiers? Yes. And how was your relation with the Routier family? How frequently would you go over there? About every day. Okay. After school? Yes. If I understand, your parents both work? Yes. How long do you think? I think the Routiers moved there in 93. Did your relationship build or have you been going over there pretty much all the time? About all the time. Okay. And you knew Devin and Damon, of course? Yes. And did you play with them? Yes. At the Routier's house? Yes. Were you welcome at the Routier's house? Yes. Were all of the neighborhood kids welcome there? Yes. And what kind of relationship did Darlie have with the neighborhood kids? Pretty good. All right. And what kind of relationship did you and Darlie have? What was that like? Well, like she was my mom. All right. Was it also like she was a friend of yours? Yes. Did you value that relationship? Yes. Do you still value that relationship? Yes. And how did Darlie seem to get along with her kids? Oh, she got along with them pretty good. Okay. As well as you and your mom get along? Yes. Okay. And did the kids appear happy? Yes. Did Devin and Damon have lots of things like Nintendos and games and TVs and those things? Yes. And did you go over there and watch TV and play games with them and things of that nature? Yes. Rebecca, did you play outside with the boys? Yes. And did Darlie know where y'all were or was some adult watching y'all at all times? Yes. And did you ride bikes with the boys and things of that nature? Yes. Where did the boys usually ride their bicycles? Like in the driveway or on the sidewalk? Okay. What about back in the alley behind the house sometimes? Yes, sometimes. Now, did you also have occasion to help out with Darlie in looking after the kids? Yes. Did you help her sometimes looking out with baby Drake? Yes. Did you have a good relationship with Drake? Yes. And what would you do with Drake? We would play with his toys. With him? Mm-hmm. Yes. Was there always some adult there when you were sort of looking after Drake? Yes. And I guess you were sort of keeping up with how Drake was doing? Yes. Now I want to direct your attention to June of last year. I guess you were out of school, I guess for the summer? Yes. And during that period of time in the summer, how much of that day when you were out of school, how much of the day would you spend over at the Routier's house? About, I don't know. Most of the day? Yes. Would you go over there pretty early in the morning? Yes. Do your parents go to work real early? Yes. And I think maybe your mom said that she got off work at something like 2:30 or 3 o'clock? Yes. Is that about right? Yes. Now, do you remember meeting a lady named Halina? Yes. On how many days did you meet Halina? About two. And would that have been right before this tragedy occurred? Yes. Now, at that time, do you remember anything about Drake or how he was progressing as a young boy? Well, what do you mean? Well, for instance, was he walking by then? Well, you had to hold onto his hands. He was trying to walk? Yes. And he was crawling around on floors and moving around some? Yes. Okay. What about teeth? Was he? He was getting teeth. Okay. And as a young girl, were you sort of paying attention to this young baby? Yes. Have you ever been around any little babies before? Yes. Now, Rebecca, is there anything that you remember about Drake in terms of how he liked to lie and how he liked to sleep? Yes. What was that? He always liked a pillow, a blanket over his head. Is that as long as you remember he liked to have a blanket over his head? Yes. Now, do you remember the first day that Helena ever came to the house just in general? Yes. And were you there most of the day? Yes. Now, I want to turn to the second day that Helena came to the house. Were you also there at that time? Yes. Were you there most of that day? Yes. Were you there when there was an incident of Helena asking, "Where is the baby?" Yes. Where, when that happened, what were you doing? Can you repeat that, please? When that happened, right before Helena asked, "Where is the baby?" Where were you? I was downstairs on the couch. Okay. And where was Darlie? She was sitting next to me. On the couch? Yes. And what were y'all doing? We were looking at a photo album. Okay. And were y'all talking? Yes, we were laughing. You were laughing? Yes. Were you looking at some photographs there? Yes. Where was Drake? He was laying down on the floor on his pillow. Okay. Sort of in front of the TV? Yes. Okay. And he was on a pillow? Yes. Was he covered up? Yes. Had the blanket all the way over his head? It wasn't all the way over his head, it was partly over his head. Okay. And do you remember Helena saying something like, "Where is the baby?" Yes. Was it obvious where Drake was? Well, was he in the middle of the floor? Yeah. Okay. And when Helena first said that, do you remember even hearing about it? Did you hear it? Did you understand what she said at first? No. Did you or Darlie respond while you were there laughing? No, because we didn't hear her. Okay. And then what did Helena do? She started looking under the couch for the baby. Okay. And did that sort of strike you as funny? Yes. Okay. Did you laugh? Yes. A little bit? Yes. And was Drake out in the middle of the room? Yes. Was anybody holding him? Well, what was he doing? He was still sleeping, and then Helena finally found him and she picked him up. Did she appear sort of upset with you all? Yes. Did you intend to laugh at Helena? No. Do you recall anything else that day, that second day, of Helena saying, "Come get this baby out of the high chair," or calling you upstairs to come down and get baby Drake? No. Okay. Mr. Mosty says, "I think that's all I have, Your Honor." And Mr. Davis says, "No questions." And the court says, "Ma'am, you may step down now." Next up, we have the testimony, again in the punishment phase of the trial, of Darin Routier, who is obviously Darlie's husband. And the direct examination is being done by Mr. Douglas Mulder. Yes, Darin, let me direct your attention back to June the 17th of 1996. And I'll ask you if that is the day that your house was released back to you and Darlie. Yes, sir, it was. Okay. And from the 6th of June until the 17th of June, you had not been permitted to go into your house, had you? No, sir, we had not. Okay. And I'll ask you if you and Darlie had occasion to go to 5801 Eagle Drive your residence there in the company of Detective Patterson and Detective Frosch? Yes, sir, we did. Okay. And did you also have a psychic with you at that time? Yes, sir, we did. About how much did you all do a walkthrough of the house and Darlie explained to Patterson and Frosch in person as to what happened and where it was and this and that? Yes, sir. Okay. And I'll ask you if the psychic was there as well. Yes, sir, she was. Okay. About how long were you in the house? A couple of hours. Okay. And from what time to what time, as best you recall? It seemed like it was dark, probably 7:30 or 8-ish. Frosch and Patterson didn't stick around very long. Okay. And when you left, I guess you were staying at that time out in Plano? Yes, sir. We never went back to the residence to stay. Pardon? We never went back to the residence to stay. Okay. Did Darlie ever go back to the residence, period, after the 17th? No, sir, she didn't. She was arrested on the 18th? Yes, sir. You have a neighbor across the street, a Miss Nelda Watts? Yes, sir. About how long have the Watts lived there? I don't know. It seemed like it was a couple of 2 summers ago. Okay. Have you ever met her? No, sir, I haven't. Have you met him? No, sir. Do you know if Darlie has met them? I don't believe she has. They weren't very social. All right. Stayed to themselves, did they? Yes, sir. In the house primarily? Yes, sir. All right. Did you have an occasion to return to your residence on the 18th? Yes, sir, we did. And who was there and what was your purpose in returning? Dana Stahl went with me. We met an insurance agent at the house around 10 or 10:30 in the morning. Okay. Dana Stahl would be Darlie's younger sister? Yes, sir. And she is 16 or 17 years old now, something like that? Yes, sir. Okay. About the same size as Darlie? Yes, sir. Okay. Did you wait out in the front yard for the insurance adjuster? Yes, sir, we did. Okay. And while you were there, did you have occasion to do any cleaning up or picking up? Yes, sir. There was just, I guess there was probably 40 or 50 flowers that were around the fountain. You are talking about wreaths and bouquets and things like that? Wreaths and bouquets and great big huge things of we just decided to go ahead and clean up all the ones that were all dried up and dead. And so I went around the back and I got one of the little pole cart dumpsters and we brought it around. We were picking all of the little stuff off of them, all the little signs and stuffed animals and things like that. And you saved those? Yes, sir. I still have them. All right. And the remainder of the things that were hauled around and back? Yes, sir. For trash removal? Yes, sir. Approximately how much damage was done to your residence? Between 15 to 18,000. You have not been reimbursed for that, have you? No, sir. I lost the house. Now, Darin, have you met a young lady, approximately 31 or 30 or 31 years of age, named Kaylin Norris, who works at American Pawn? No, I don't recall her. Is she here? A dark haired young lady with long hair worked in the jewelry department of American Pawn? If I saw her, I would probably know her. Okay. What is American Pawn? Is this your typical pawn shop? No, sir. This pawn shop is probably the size of the HEB over there. I mean, it's a monster. They sell airplanes and everything in their boats. It's a great big, huge pawn shop. They said it's one of the largest in the nation. Okay. Have you had occasion to go up there from time to time? Yes, sir. About how many times have you been there? Oh, I have probably been there 15 or 20 times. How many times have you and Darlie been there? Probably about the same. Was she usually with you when you would? Yes, sometimes we would go for lunch or something and just, kind of go by there and see what they have got. I mean, it's kind of interesting because they have always got new stuff in there. Who would you deal with there? A man named Dan Actually, Dan would call us at the office and have us come up there if they had something that was just spectacular, a really good deal. This was used jewelry, I assume? Yes, sir. Okay. And if he thought he had something that y'all liked or would like, he would call you and you would come over? Yes, sir. These are not really expensive pieces, are they? No, just, a couple $100s. Okay. So just kind of an investment. We just, always liked jewelry. So we'd just, pick up something here and there. Okay. Do you remember any occasion when Darlie would snatch the jewelry out of the saleswoman's hand and look at it? And if she didn't like it, throw it back at her? No, sir. I mean, that is not even in Darlie's character. It doesn't sound like anything she would do. No, sir. I was there every time. I think I would have remembered that. I mean, there would be no reason in doing something like that, would there? Not with a place full of guns like that. Do you ever recall being in there with the children? We did take them, I think, once. Yeah. Okay. Was there any fuss with them or any problems with the children? I just remember one time we were in there and there was all kinds of big stuff for them to play with in there. Airplanes? Well, they had this kind of looks like an airplane boat type of thing that floats on the air, and they have great big huge toys, in there to play on. And I had to kind of get on to them a little bit and tell them to get off it because they had signs written all over them saying, "Do not climb on them, do not get on them." Did you ever hear Darlie yell at the boys, "Get your asses over there"? No, sir, she doesn't use that kind of language. Darren, do you know a lady by the name of Eileen Shermer? Yes, sir. And how do you know her? She lives a couple of blocks away from us, and they have a business that is right around the corner from ours. Okay. Is it related to yours? Same type of business? They are the beginning process. They are designers. And then actually, they are the beginning and we're the end. Okay. So there's manufacturing in between the two of us. So y'all are friends and visited in each other's homes. They have only been over to our house one time, and I think we have been to their house one time. They have kids about the same age as ours. Okay. They are not close friends. No, sir. Have they have a boy about the same right in between Damon and Devon? Yes, sir. Okay. Do you know if your boys would ride their bicycles over in the Shermer neighborhood? I don't think they would ride their bikes that far. No. Okay. Did the Shermer boy ever ride his bicycle over in y'all's neighborhood? I don't know. He seemed like a lot littler. He didn't have a lot of the older boys and stuff in the neighborhood to play around with. So I don't really know. I think I have seen him around, but just a couple times, usually with their mom or dad. Okay. They are very protective of their kids. Were y'all protective of yours? Yes, very much so. Would you allow your boys to ride their bicycles in the street? No, never. Of course, you don't know whether they did or not, do you? Not exactly. No, sir. Well, I mean, you weren't with them all the time when they were riding their bicycles. Well, right. But from the time they were really little, they knew for a fact that they were not going to ride in the street. They had to stay up on the sidewalk. Were you trying to put in speed bumps on that street? Yes, sir, I was. And I was also responsible for having the children at play signs put up in the neighborhood. Okay. And what did you do with respect to where you parked your Pathfinder or Darlie's car out in front? That would keep people from going around that corner too fast. It would kind of slow them down. So they would have to be careful when they went around that corner. How was that? Well, just the way the corner is designed, going around the outside, sometimes people would go 35 to 40 miles an hour going around that corner. So with my truck there, it would make them slow down because they knew that they couldn't see from one side of the road to the other. Where did the insurance people come from that were going to see your house on the 18th? They came from Houston. Okay, were they coming in specially to make their inspection and make their estimate? Yes, sir. I don't know exactly. There was 3 of them. I don't know why they came from Houston to do it, but they did. They sent some special people in. Okay. Darren, directing your attention to June the 5th of 1996, when you had testified to this sometime back, days ago. When you were working in the garage, did you all keep the door locked from the garage to the utility room and from the utility room to the garage? No, I never locked that door. Okay. Perimeter exterior doors were locked? Yes, sir. But not the door that led from the utility room to the garage? Yes, sir. Okay. And as you know, the jury has found Darlie guilty. And as part of our system, you have to accept that. Do you understand that? No, sir, I don't. Well, that is what I want to ask you is simply this. Does this change your faith in your wife? You have lost more than anyone in this situation, haven't you? Yes, sir, I have. I have lost everything. Well, you have lost 2 sons and you have lost a wife, haven't you? Yes, sir, I have. Are you still as confident now as you were back days ago with respect to your faith in Darlie and her inability to do anything like this? Yes, sir. It hasn't shaken your faith? No, sir, it has not changed one bit. Mr. Mulder says, we will pass the witness. Mr. Greg Davis says, no questions. Okay, so let's recap what we've heard so far. We first hear from Dana Routier, who is Darlie's sister in law. We learned that she had first met Darlie when she was in high school, and it was when they first moved to Lubbock, Texas. And it just so happened that they had ended up marrying brothers from the same family, which they didn't even learn until after they had lost touch for some time. Now, Dana and Deon, so Dana's the sister in law, Deon is Darin's brother, would visit the Routiers about once a month, and they would drive from Lubbock to Rowlett, Texas to visit Darin and Darlie. Dana said that she admired how Darlie raised her kids, and that when Dana became a first time mom, she would call Darlie for advice. When she's asked about how Darlie supervised the kids when they were outside, especially, she said that she watched them all the time. Now, during cross examination, Mr. Greg Davis asks a couple of questions that, of course, don't get answered, but it just kind of leaves the jury to make up their own conclusions. And these were A, why Darlie ended up going to a different high school in Lubbock, and B, did she know that Darlie was having problems in her home? And of course, as I said, these weren't answered. So he just kind of leaves it at that. So we're just kind of left to make up our own conclusions about that. When Mr. Mulder then does his redirect of Dana, he asks her about the last time that Dana and Deon were at the Routiers. And it was really about a week or so before the crime occurred. She talked about going to a fair that she had never been to. But what I thought was really odd, maybe it was just me, her answer was nothing but how great of a time they had and how it was the best weekend. And she said this over and over, but in different ways. Like it really just didn't have a whole lot of substance to it. When Dana is asked if Darin and Darlie appeared to be acting normally, she said that they did. And, these questions don't come right out of thin air, right? There must be some kind of situation that occurred that would even make him ask this in the first place. But, again, we never get to hear what that is. The next person up is Darin's cousin, who is Amanda Gray, and she has been a school teacher for 11 years and said that Darlie was a good and loving mother. And being around kids, she's taught for 11 years, right? She was aware of what kids acted like when they weren't being taken care of at home and said that this was definitely not the case with Darlie. The prosecution had no questions for her. Next up is Melanie Waits, and she had met Darlie through mutual friends. They started going to birthday parties for each other's kids, and then this eventually turned into shopping for the holidays together and so forth. Melanie said that she has never heard Darlie cuss and that both her and Darin were great parents. Now, Melanie is cross examined, and this goes a little bit different. We find out that at the Routier home in 1994, there was a party the Saturday night before Mother's Day. Now, whether this is a coincidence that it was Mother's Day the next day or not, I don't know, nor do I personally care. She is an adult. She can have a party whenever she wants to. However, we did learn that the kids were obviously not there, and she didn't believe that Darlie's sisters were there either. Her mom, Darlie's mom, Darlie Key, was there. But we also find out that they had some entertainment, and it was a male stripper. And I know this whole transcript is definitely not a laughing matter, but I can tell you it was so hard for me to record it when he said Master Blaster as the stripper's name. I mean, I had to really take a moment and just continue recording after that. So in 1995, the Saturday night, again before Mother's Day, there was also another party that they had, but this time they stayed in a hotel in Dallas. Now, there were quite a few women there, including Baja or Barbara Jovel, Darlie Key, who again is Darlie's mom, and Darlie's sister, Dana and Danielle. Now, Dana at the time is around 15 years old. The A group of them then went to a male strip club, but obviously the younger girls didn't go. They would have never let them in, and that they would have gotten home around noon on Mother's Day. And this whole thing, I'll tell you, this whole thing about Mother's Day, I mean, and obviously these are just all my personal opinions, but Mother's Day is meant to be for moms, right? And moms should be able to decide whatever it is the hell they want to do. But it doesn't mean that, you can't take any time for yourself to enjoy yourself, right? And just have a moment for yourself. So Deon, Darin's brother, is the next to get up and testify. And he gets really choked up when he's talking about his nephews. He would visit at least once a month, and he became very, very close with Damon and Devin. He is adamant that Darlie would never, ever have hurt those kids. In fact, the way that Darlie disciplined the kids was to talk to them. He never saw her even spank them. Now, Rebecca Neal gets on the stand, and she is the 12-year-old daughter of Terry and Karen Neal, who live across the street. She said that she was at Darlie's house almost every day. Her parents worked during the day, and so she would come over and hang out at the house and play with Devin and Damon. Now, on these days that Halina had come over, Rebecca was also over at the house. Rebecca had considered Darlie more of a mom to her, and she would help her with Drake. And she knew that Drake liked to sleep with a blanket over his head. The second day that Halina came over and asked, where's the baby? Rebecca said that both her and Darlie were sitting on the couch looking at pictures, and Drake was on the floor. Now, if you remember, Halina had said that Darlie was in the chair holding Drake and that Rebecca was sitting on the couch across from Darlie, but that's not the way that Rebecca tells it. While they were on the couch, they were looking at pictures and laughing when Halina showed up. And so Rebecca says they didn't hear her at first. So when Halina asked where Drake was, she ended up looking underneath the couch, which Darlie and Rebecca found kind of funny. So they did laugh at this, and Drake the whole time was on the floor, on his pillow, covered up and sleeping. So Darin's testimony, he's next. We learn that after the house was released back to them on the 17th of June, they went with detectives Patterson and Frosch, and they had brought along a psychic. As they were in the house about 2 hours, evidently Darlie was explaining to them things that had happened. But, I don't know that we've ever heard anything about this, right? About on the 17th, about this information that she was giving them. Now, at the time, the Routiers were living in Plano, Texas. And even though the house had been released back to them, they never went back to live in that house. On the 18th, and this is the day that Darlie was actually arrested, we learned that it was not Darlie who was with Darin at the house outside cleaning up, like Nelda Watts, the neighbor across the street, had claimed. Remember, she said she saw them throwing teddy bears and then Darin would toss them into the back of the Pathfinder. Instead, it was Dana, Darlie's sister, who was with him, and Dana and Darlie are around the same size. They were outside of the house waiting for an insurance adjuster and decided to clean up while they waited. Now, it should be noted, though, that when the defense was questioning Darin, he was never asked about them tossing these things around or tossing them into the vehicle, like Nelda Watts had said that they were doing. He's then taken through to answer many questions that were brought up in earlier testimony, like about locking the utility room door from the garage area, why the truck was parked in front of the Routier home, and the incident with the boys at the American pawn shop. Now, there is more of Darin's testimony coming up in the next episode where even more things are covered. Now, before I sign off this episode, I found it really, really interesting, as I'm sure you did too, that there were two very, very different stories here about Drake and how he was found when Halina showed up at the house. Remember, she said that Darlie was holding him in the chair and it looked like a pile of laundry to her. And that when she picked up Drake and she removed the blankets, she made it out as if Drake couldn't breathe or was in danger somehow. Now, Rebecca said that they were both on the couch and that Drake was on the floor sleeping. So I'd be curious, who do you believe? Halina or Rebecca? Let me know in the comments. That's all for this episode. Please like and subscribe. It doesn't cost a thing, and click that bell to get notified of any upcoming episodes. And you can do this if you're listening to Beach House 34 on YouTube especially. There's no bells on any other subscription service, just as far as I know, just on YouTube. So thank you all so much. We will talk really soon.